with that one, because that's the astronaut one where you.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, I want it. Yeah. It's okay. Get strapped in for Mars. Good evening. I'd like to call the April Common Council meeting to order. Would you please stand for the pledge to our nation's flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please conduct the roll call?
Blinker, Nardi, Snyder,
Present.
Reynolds,
Present.
Weiss. Present. Brown.
Present.
Williamson.
Here.
Downing.
Here.
Allersmeyer.
Here.
Quorum present.
Thank you. First order of business tonight is a couple of public hearings. I'll entertain a motion to recess for such hearings.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. First ordinance is ordinance 2023-12.
An ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Lafayette, Indiana, annexing certain territory into the City of Lafayette, Indiana, 2023 Concord Crossing, Tippecanoe Development to DF Properties Super Voluntary Annexation.
Any public comment for this ordinance?
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Coker. I'm a constituent who lives at 529 Wellington Court, Lafayette, Indiana. I am been coming to these meetings, and I'm just a little curious about the intents when we're looking at building. I understand this is a residential development, if that's correct. Is that cool? And so I just have curiosities if there is any intention or conversation or investigation into looking at creating affordable housing. I know talking about the housing crisis it's often discussed, but I'm just kind of curious if that has been at all in conversation at all when we're looking at what type of housing we might be looking to build on this land.
Barney?
Well, I mean, it's an apartment complex.
Yeah.
It's a private
Sure.
development, it's not a public development, it's a private development.
Okay, it's
So
gonna,
it's an apartment complex with some maybe townhouses in it and things like that over
Okay.
time.
Okay. And I hope, I appreciate that. I think the reason I just kind of wanted to ask this is I'm bringing us back to June 6, 2022, where our city signed a resolution for declaring racism as a public health crisis. And one of those aspects that was discussed pretty heavily in that study the YWCA did was talking about affordable housing. So it's just something that I felt I should ask the question and bring to our city council as we think about building and expanding housing, which I think is an important thing in our community. I just want to make sure that that's a part of our conversations. That's something that we had voted on and said is important to our community. And so I'm excited to see where these plans go, but I would hope that our city council is considering that when we're having conversations about the expansion of housing in our community. Thank you.
Any other public comment for ordinance 2023-12?
Really quickly, Kevin
Sure.
Riley representing the petitioner on this, just to answer the question. These are going to be multifamily, so you've got duplexes, townhomes, apartments, and they all are going to be market rate, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. Our next ordinance for public hearing is ordinance 2023-13.
An ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Lafayette, Indiana, annexing certain territory in the City of Lafayette, Indiana, 2023 Lafayette Southeast Voluntary Annexation Steel Property.
Any public comment for this ordinance? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to reconvene.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, on to the approval of the minutes. Mr. Downing?
So moved.
Mr. Snyder?
I will second that motion.
Okay, any corrections, comments from council about the minutes? All right, all those in favor of approval of the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, presentation disposal of claims.
There are none.
Presentation of petitions and communications.
There are none.
Reports of city offices on file at the clerk's office.
Renew Department monthly February, Waterworks Department monthly February, and Fleet Maintenance monthly February.
Thank you. Those are available on the city's website if you would like to view them. We have no ordinances for second reading this evening, so we're jumping into ordinances for first reading. The first one up is ordinance 2023-14.
An ordinance to amend ordinance 2022-36 and ordinance fixing the salaries of appointed officers and employees of the City of Lafayette, Indiana for the year 2023. excluding the sworn protective occupation and law enforcement members of the police and fire departments.
Thank you. Ms. Ashen-Weiss?
I move for passage of ordinance number 2023-14 on first reading.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Second.
Been moved and seconded.
Good evening, Madam President, ladies and gentlemen of council. Jeremy Deal, City Controller. The ordinance before you requests two separate items of business. The first is to add a full-time position entitled Zoo Educator at the classification of Pat 1. Due to expansion of programs and camps, the Parks Department requests this additional full-time zoo educator position. The department is confident that this position addition will enhance service to the community and also that it'll be fully supported by revenue generated within the park non-reverting fund. So this position is going to be funded by the park non-reverting fund, which is houses various self-sufficient activities. Among those are camps and educational programs, in addition to the water park and the zoo itself. The second part of the ordinance is a request to change in title only an existing position. That is in the Economic Development Department, a change of title from Senior Planner / Project Manager to Senior Community Development Manager. So that classification of that position remains constant, unchanged, no adoption or amendment to the budget whatsoever. Simply a change in title. So I ask for your approval of this ordinance and containing those two matters of business, and we'll entertain any questions you have.
Thank you.
I just want to reiterate that this position, this zookeeper's position, is not something that will be funded by the general.
No, it's a
Fine,
zoo
it is.
educator, so it's
It will be paid for by the fees that are generated.
correct.
Any other comments or questions from council? Thank you. Comments or questions from the audience over ordinance 2023-14? Seeing none, would the clerk please conduct a roll call vote?
Snyder?
Aye.
Reynolds?
Aye.
Weiss?
Aye.
Brown?
Aye.
Williamson? Downing?
Aye.
Ordinance passes 6-0.
Thank you. Next ordinance for first reading is ordinance 2023-15.
An ordinance for additional appropriation of the American Rescue Plan Grant Fund Number 1760.
Mrs. Williamson?
I move we hear and approve ordinance 2023-15.
Downing?
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Welcome back.
Yeah, good to be back. Jeremy Deal, City Controller. This ordinance is a request for appropriation from the American Rescue Plan Act Fund. As you recall, we received two different distributions of these federal funds. Our first tranche received in 2021, the second tranche received last year, totaling $15,881,059. The first tranche of our ARPA funds was designated to water infrastructure projects and SCADA improvements for both water and renew. So $7,940,530 was actually appropriated last year, but it was not entirely spent. We only spent about $2.5 million. So this appropriation request contains a reappropriation of those remaining funds. So the first two detail lines you see on the ordinance, the $5,318,733 for water projects, that is to continue completion of the WEA storage tank, Glick well field improvements, and SCADA improvements for water. The second line, the $72,123, are the remaining funds that were designated for SCADA improvements for renew. Additionally, the request includes $1.5 million for road and street projects, $1.5 million for park and rec trails, and $1 million to renew utility expansion in Service Area 11B to the south of the city. So these last three appropriation amounts totaling $4 million are designated to come from the city's revenue replacement portion of the ARPA funds. So that amount of funds, up to $10 million, is not limited by the interim rule of the Treasury, but rather follows the guidance of the final rule, which allowed recipients of ARPA funds to spend on a greater variety of general government services. So the total appropriation request of $9,390,856 is what is requested on the ordinance, and I ask for your approval of that request.
Thank you. Comments or questions from council? Input from the audience over ordinance 2023-15? Thank you, Mr. Deal. Seeing none, would the clerk please conduct a roll call vote?
Snyder?
Aye.
Reynolds?
Aye.
Weiss? Aye. Brown?
Aye.
Williamson?
Aye.
County?
Aye.
Ordinance passes 6-0.
This ordinance will need a public hearing set for May 1st at 6:01 PM. Mr. Snyder?
I move that we have a public hearing for ordinance 2023-15.
Mr. Reynolds?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? All right, thank you. Next ordinance is ordinance 2023-16.
An ordinance to amend the zoning ordinance of Tippecanoe County, Indiana, Uzo Amendment Number 107.
Ms. Hession-Weiss?
I move for, for consideration of ordinance number 2023-16 on first reading.
Mr. Brown?
Second.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi, thank you. David Hittle with the Area Plan Commission. This is a proposed amendment to the zoning ordinance having to do with the planned unit development section of the ordinance, and it's a series of changes, pretty modest changes, all having to do with process or administration. I'll go through them really quickly. The first would allow for a new pathway to allow for simplified rezoning to allow for changes in the permitted use list. So when you do a new planned unit development, you're essentially creating your own zoning ordinance, and with part of that ordinance is a list of uses that are permitted. We've recently had happen within the past twice or so within the past year, a existing planned unit development will allow for, a laundry list of 25, 30 different uses. Lo and behold, there's a vacancy in a commercial center and someone else wants to move in, but their use is not listed. We had a case where in a commercial strip center, there was in a planned unit development, there was a vacancy and a veterinarian wanted to move in there. It was perfectly reasonable, but veterinarian did not appear on that original rezoning list. So rather than make them go through the entire thing, we wanted to create a pathway where you can allow for these modest changes to these permitted use lists. So that's part of this. Another part is to conform it with changes recently made to the APC bylaws. We recently expanded the amount of time between a petitioner's filing and his or her rezoning or any kind of hearing in front of the APC to allow for more communication between staff and petitioner and neighbors, interested parties. It makes for a more efficient hearing. And this would simply conform planned unit development rules with the rest of the APC rules. And then for the last two, we wanted to extend deadlines and timelines for submittal of construction plans, and it'll also allow for an increased abandonment time, especially these days with the economy as it is. Sometimes developers aren't able to get to the thing that they've rezoned in the time frame they anticipated. Rather than have the thing lapse after 2 years for lack of action, we want to be able to keep it on life support, if you will, in case they're able to get to it at a later date. So these are kind of regulations that have been in place that have not proven helpful but have proven harmful, and we want to either get rid of them or amend them to make them a little bit more useful.
Thank you. Comments or questions from council?
Did you go through the part, I didn't hear it, about where now the staff is going to be responsible for doing the mailings and that kind of stuff yet?
Yeah, that's number 2
Yeah.
of conforming the planned unit development bylaws with the APC bylaws.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions from council?
This is to help facilitate the construction process.
Yeah,
Primarily.
in a few different ways, it's to make things easier on developers.
Okay. Thank you.
Comments or questions from the audience over ordinance 2023-16? Thank you, Mr. Hiddle.
Thank you.
Seeing none, would the clerk please conduct a roll call vote?
Snyder?
Aye.
Reynolds?
Aye.
Weiss? Aye. Brown?
Aye.
Williamson.
Aye.
Downing. Aye. Ordinance passes 6-0.
Thank you. Next ordinance for first reading is ordinance 2023-17.
An ordinance to amend the zoning ordinance of Tippecanoe County, Indiana to rezone certain real estate from I-3 to GB.
Mrs. Williamson,
I move we hear and approve ordinance 2023-17.
Mr. Downing.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Riley.
Good evening, Kevin Riley with Riley, Teeter and Schreier, representing the petitioner, David Keller. The petitioner leases approximately 810 square feet in a building located at 646, 680 North 36th Street. This is just north of East Side 10. Petitioner plans to operate a non-traditional funeral home from the premises, but funeral homes are not permitted in I-3, which is the current zoning for the property. So we, as a result, have to rezone to GB, general business. I would note that the property to the south, including East Side 10, is GB, so there is other GB in the area. The funeral home will offer cremation services and merchandise at a fraction of the traditional cost to help price-conscious families. But just to be clear, the cremation services will not actually, cremation activity will not take place on site. That takes place in Fowler. This is really just a place to have the urns and merchandise available and for families to pick up the remains. All of the current uses in the building are permitted in GB, so it doesn't cause any problems for other tenants of the building. We received a positive staff report from Area Plan. We received unanimous approval at Area Plan. We think this is an appropriate zoning for this property, and we request your approval. Happy to answer any questions.
Comments, questions from council?
What is a non-traditional funeral home?
I think it's, so they're not actually going to have the services in the facility. I think it's just, it's a more cost-effective option for families, I think.
So there wouldn't be a high volume of traffic or
Right,
anything there?
It's more of come in, pick up the urn, maybe browse whatever products they have there. But it's not kind of what you would think of as like your traditional funeral home, the larger funeral homes in town.
So they're dealing exclusively with cremation services?
Right, that's my understanding. They're not gonna actually have the bodies.
So they won't be selling caskets and the like?
Right, my understanding is they're not selling caskets. My understanding is it is strictly cremation service, cremation and cremation merchandise. So no caskets.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Riley. Input from the audience over ordinance 2023-17. Seeing none, would the clerk please conduct a roll call vote?
Snyder.
Aye.
Reynolds.
Aye.
Weiss. Aye. Brown.
Aye.
Williamson.
Aye.
Downing.
Aye.
Ordinance passes 6-0.
Thank you. Ordinance 2023-18 is next.
An amendment to ordinance number 2010-11 establishing a local Ellsworth 624 New York Street Historic District in the city of Lafayette, Indiana.
Mr. Snyder?
I move, Madam President, that we hear ordinance 2023-18, please.
Second.
Thank you.
Good
Mr.
evening.
Collier?
John Collier from Economic Development. As you notice, we have 4 ordinances before you tonight. 2 are to designate individual properties as local districts. 1 is the expansion of an existing district, and the 3rd is actually the designation of a new conservation district. So this first one is to establish the local Ellsworth 642 New York Street Historic District. This is a gable front Gothic Revival style home built in about 1860. And it's rated as contributing and within the Ellsworth National Register District, and it's definitely worthy of designation. The Historic Preservation Commission voted to recommend approval for this property as a local district at its March 27th meeting, and they would appreciate the council's support for this ordinance as well.
Questions from council? Questions from the public over this ordinance? Would the clerk please conduct a roll call vote?
Snyder.
Aye.
Reynolds.
Aye.
Weiss. Aye. Brown.
Aye.
Williamson.
Aye.
Downing.
Aye.
Ordinance passes 6-0.
Thank you. Got your feet planted, you ready for the
I'm
next one?
ready.
Okay. Ordinance 2023-19.
An amendment to ordinance number 2010-11 establishing a local Wabash Avenue, 718 Wabash Avenue Historic District in the city of Lafayette, Indiana.
Ms. Hession Weiss?
I move for consideration of ordinance 2023-19 on first reading.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
All right, John Collier again. This is for the establishment of a building that you'll all recognize as the Fairfield Township Trustee Office. The structure was originally built as Fire Station Number 4. It previously had a tower and also a second floor, but it's currently considered a 19th century functional architectural style. It was built in 1900. It's rated as contributing and definitely worthy of local designation. The commission reviewed and recommended approval at its March meeting and would appreciate the council's support.
Questions from council?
Just clarification that all of these are the petitioner's request to have this.
Correct, right.
So I just wanted to make
Yep,
sure that.
absolutely.
Questions from the audience over ordinance 2023-19? All right, Madam Clerk, would you please conduct a roll call vote?
Snyder?
Aye.
Reynolds?
Aye.
Weiss?
Aye.
Brown?
Aye.
Williamson?
Aye.
Downing?
Aye.
Ordinance passes 6-0.
You drink anything, you good? Ordinance 2023-20.
An amendment to ordinance number 2010-11 establishing a local Centennial South Historic District in the city of Lafayette, Indiana.
Mrs. Williamson.
I move we hear and approve ordinance 2023-20.
Second. Thank you.
All right, John Collier again. This is an expansion of an existing district that had a different name prior to tonight. Originally, it was established as the 420 North 5th Street Local Historic District because it was an individual property. Now, these two structures, which are on an adjacent property, are, we're going to change the name so that they all have one name instead of two individual specific property address names. I know it's confusing, but it all makes sense. So we are proposing this be called the Local Centennial South Historic District. Would include 415 Brown Street, which is another interesting thing about this property. It's one parcel, but two different addresses. 415 Brown Street, one structure, and 419, 421 Brown Street, the adjacent duplex structure. 415 is a gable front architectural style home that was built in about 1890. It's rated as contributing. 419 to 421, the duplex is an American four-square duplex built in 1890 and also rated as contributing, and both are within the Centennial National Register District, and both are worthy of local designation. The commission reviewed at the March meeting and recommends approval and would request your support as well.
Thank you. Questions from council? Questions from the audience over 2023-20? Madam Clerk, would you please conduct a roll call vote?
Snyder?
Aye.
Reynolds?
Aye.
Weiss?
Aye.
Brown?
Aye.
Williamson?
Yes.
Downing?
Sorry.
Mr. Downing?
He was distracted.
Okay, all right. Ordinance passes 6-0.
Thank you. Next up is ordinance 2023-21.
An amendment to ordinance number 2010-11 establishing Centennial East Central 515 North 7th Street Conservation District in the city of Lafayette, Indiana.
Mr. Snyder.
Madam Clerk, I move to hear ordinance number 2023-21.
I second.
Thank you.
Okay, this is the last one. This one is a conservation district called Centennial East Central, another new name, but it all makes sense when we look at the map. And if you're ever interested, I'd be happy to walk you through it. So this house is actually listed as a Queen Anne style home built in 1890 and is rated as continuing. However, interestingly, it was actually built in 1840 to 1850 as a Greek Revival style home, and it was one story. And in the 1890s, they added the second story in the porch, which changed its whole classification, and it now is considered in a Queen Anne style. Anyway, it's just an interesting story. So the Historic Preservation Commission recommended approval for this as a conservation district. And if you recall, the conservation district has fewer restrictions on it than a locally designated property does. So they would only have to come to the commission if they wanted to demolish the structure, move it, or add some kind of an addition to the structure. Otherwise, they can do whatever they like at the property. And so the commission reviewed this in the March meeting and would appreciate your support.
Any questions from council? Questions or comments from the audience over ordinance 2023-21? Seeing none, would the clerk please conduct a roll call vote? Thank you, Mr.
Snyder?
Collier.
Aye.
Reynolds?
Aye.
Weiss?
Aye.
Brown?
Aye.
Williamson?
Aye.
Downing?
Aye.
Ordinance passes 6-0.
Thank you. That concludes the ordinance portion of the evening. We're moving on to resolutions. The first resolution is Resolution 2023-07.
A resolution establishing a fiscal plan for the annexation of certain territory in the city of Lafayette, Indiana, 2023 Lafayette Southeast Voluntary Annexation Steel Property.
Ms. Hesham Weiss.
I move for consideration of resolution number 2023-7 on first and final reading.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
Second.
Very good. So as part of the annexation process, the city is required to prepare and adopt a fiscal plan. The fiscal plan discusses the provisions of both non-capital services, which are things like police and fire protection, city hall government support, parks, and capital services such as water and sewer extensions. Non-capital services are required to be provided within 1 year of the annexation. The fiscal plan does contemplate a nominal increase in expenses for police, for fuel, and the street department for this annexation. The water and sewer extensions are still in the planning phase, but regardless, they will still be provided within the 3 years as required by state law. And then, as you can see in Appendix 1 of the fiscal plan, it will show that the estimated levy increase, even prior to the proposed redevelopment of the project, will exceed the estimated cost for the non-capital services set forth in. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from council? Questions from the audience over Resolution 2023-07? Seeing none, would the clerk please conduct a roll call vote? Thank you.
Snyder?
Aye.
Reynolds?
Aye.
Weiss?
Aye.
Brown?
Aye.
Williamson?
Aye.
Downing?
Aye.
Resolution passes 6-0.
Thank you. Resolution 2023-08.
A resolution establishing a fiscal plan for the annexation of certain territory into the city of Lafayette, Indiana, 2023 Concord Crossing, Tippecanoe Development 2, DF Properties Super Voluntary Annexation.
Thank you, Mrs. Williamson.
I move we hear and approve Resolution 2023-08.
Second.
All right. Can I just say ditto?
Same thing, different name?
Basically, yeah, same thing for the other annexation. Both of them contemplate small increases for non-capital services related to road maintenance and police for fuel. But again, the expected tax levy increase will cover the cost of those services. And water and sewer are, of course, already in this area, so.
Excellent, thank you. Questions from council? Questions from the audience over Resolution 2023-08? Seeing none, would the clerk please conduct a roll call vote?
Snyder?
Aye.
Reynolds?
Aye.
Weiss?
Aye.
Brown?
Aye.
Williamson?
Aye.
Downing?
Aye.
Resolution passes 6-0.
Thank you. Next is Resolution 2023-09.
A resolution declaring the designation of certain real estate as an economic revitalization area and approving the application for property tax abatement, DJS Leasing, Houston Electric Real Estate.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder.
Madam Clerk, I move that we hear Resolution 2023-09.
Mr.
Second.
Brown? Thank you. Mr. Carson?
Yes, good evening. Dennis Carson, Economic Development Director for the City of Lafayette. I'm excited about some new projects, some new economic development investment that'll be happening in our community. The first one here was DJS Leasing, better known as Houston Electric, making investments in their real estate. This resolution will establish an economic revitalization area and also their application for their real estate abatement. We have representatives here tonight from Houston Electric, and I allow them to come up and tell more about the project.
Thank you, Dennis. Hello, I'm Reed Pittard with McGuire Sponsel, here with Matt Houston.
Yeah, Matt Houston from Houston Electric.
So first of all, thank you for your time and consideration of this project. I've gotten the opportunity to work with Matt and his company over the past few months, and they're first-class people with and operate a first-class company. So, and I know that they greatly appreciate their partnership with the city of Lafayette and hope to further that with this expansion project. That being the construction of a 4,000 square foot prefabrication building, hopefully this year, and then later on, the construction of some office space at around 8,000 square feet of office space. The biggest benefit to the company with this prefab shop will be the ability to construct and fabricate electrical components off of the construction project site and to later bring them on site and install them
basically decreasing their time on the project site and expediting the entire construction process. So it will hopefully allow them to further use their current workforce or more efficiently. That's not to forget that this project does include the addition of 15 new full-time positions. Those are CWs and apprentices, so the trade-style positions that are much needed, as well as a couple of pre-construction engineers and project managers. The average wage of those positions are around $24 an hour. And again, that's 15 of those over the next few years. So, yeah, thank you again, and we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Questions from council?
I got a quick question. This fabrication shop, you have locations outside of, obviously, the city of Lafayette. So you're looking at bringing lots of jobs and opportunities here locally to cover those areas. Where else will you be fabbing things on site here for with other
Currently, we have
projects?
a project in Nashville, Tennessee, then we're prefabbing in Lafayette. We have a project in Bloomington, student housing project down there, that we're prefabbing in Lafayette. I think everybody knows the big battery plant's coming to Kokomo, Indiana. We plan to run a lot of that through our prefab shop in Lafayette. So we're just really trying to maximize our skilled workforce and trying to put it into an environment where we can control the quality and really train up the next level of electricians. So I think that's what we need in our community.
Is that a new building or is that added on to the one that was there?
It's new freestanding building.
New, okay,
It's not attached to the existing building.
okay.
Do you anticipate your business to continue to ramp up like this?
Yeah, in the next 5-10 years, I think with what's going on in
Yeah.
Kokomo, with what's going on in Lafayette, West Lafayette, Purdue University, great things there. And yeah, we just see increases in the next 5 years. So we're just really trying to prep for that.
Thank you.
Thank you for being a very responsible business in our community, Mr. Houston. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for hearing us today.
Thank you. Comments from the public over Resolution 2023-09? Seeing none, would the clerk please conduct a roll call vote?
Snyder?
Aye.
Reynolds?
Aye.
Weiss?
Aye.
Brown?
Aye.
Williamson?
Aye.
Downing?
Aye.
Resolution passes 6-0.
Thank you. This resolution will need a public hearing set to May 1st at 6:02 PM. Ms. Hession-Weiss?
I move that we accept or have a public hearing on this at 6:02 PM on the next meeting.
Mr. Brown?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, on to Resolution 2023-10.
A resolution approving a deduction for tax abatement in an economic revitalization area real estate, LB Associates LLC, future Hagerty Point 5 LLC.
Thank you, Mrs. Williamson.
I move we hear and approve ordinance 2023-10.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Carson?
Again, Dennis Carson, Economic Development Director. I'm going to speak to the next two resolutions. These are by the same developer, Jerry Brand, LB Associates. Again, we're excited about these two investments into warehouses in our communities, something that is much needed to support our local industry. Is asking for 10-year tax abatements on both of these. It would be a substantial investment. And these were also passed unanimously by the Redevelopment Commission as a recommendation to you all as well. Jerry's here tonight, so I'm going to allow him to come up and explain more about the project.
Great, thank you.
My name is Jerry Brand with Inoak Investments. Madam President, council members, thank you for your time this evening. We are requesting a tax abatement for an entity known as LB Associates. LB Associates is owned by Inoak Investments. We will go through and transfer the deeds of the actual property when we go through and do construction to Hagerty 5 and Hagerty 6 LLC. This will be a 134,000 square foot facility on Hagerty 6 and a 60,000 square foot facility on Hagerty 5. If you remember, right before COVID, you granted a tax abatement on Hagerty 4. That is being completed right now and has a tenant already signed a lease that's a Caterpillar in the Lafayette community. Inoak Investments tries to go through and provide adequate facilities for growth within the Lafayette area. So most of our properties, all of our tenants are doing things within the Lafayette area. We're trying to provide an area which we have some manufacturing presence or warehouse presence. The warehouses presence we have is supporting manufacturing jobs are within the city as well. I have an actual diagram if that helps anybody, if they'd like to see that in terms of the properties that I'd be willing to hand out, if that's a.
That was going to be my question, sir. So-
Okay.
They're all in that one section, aren't you, Jerry?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, I'm good, Jerry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the building on the top of the drawing is Haggerty 4. Again, I stated that will be completed here in May, and then we're seeking to pursue a tax abatement on 5 and 6.
This is right on Haggerty Lane.
Park East Boulevard and Haggerty Lane.
I assume they're precast tip-up structures.
They are
that
pre-engineered steel that are very similar to our other product. In our industry, anything over 120,000 is cost efficient, maybe 100,000 to go precast. Anything under that is a little bit better on pre-engineered steel. We're trying to go through and hit the 60 to 80,000 square foot client. That seems a little bit better supporting sequence in terms of what we have. And just to be honest, we've built a really long building on Haggerty 4. 5 and 6 are separated for drainage, is the only reason we separated them.
And the jobs that your abatement says you'll create, it's just got quantity of 3. Can you describe what jobs you will create?
Yes,
with
I
this
tried to be as
structure?
vague as possible in a jobs created.
I'm just curious.
We're searching a real property tax abatement. We foresee companies that come in on the manufacturing sector to ask for other abatements as it sets up with their particular need. We don't have the ability, because we're going through with our clients, to really tell them exactly what's there, but the ones I talked to, Dana Fairfield, Cat, Tate and Lyle, they asked me, you mean the jobs that we're supporting at our plant or here? So that's why I leave that low. I apologize for being embarrassingly low, but I didn't.
Thank you.
I'd rather
That explained a
under-deliver and
lot.
overachieve.
Any other questions from council? Comments or questions from the audience? Thank you, Mr. Brand.
Thank you.
Would the clerk please conduct a roll call vote on Resolution 2023-10?
Snyder?
Aye.
Reynolds?
Aye.
Weiss?
Aye.
Brown?
Aye.
Williamson? Downing?
Aye.
Resolution passes 6-0.
Thank you. And going along with that, next is Resolution 2023-11.
A resolution approving a deduction for the tax abatement in an economic revitalization area real estate LB Associates LLC, Haggerty Point 6 LLC.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder.
Madam President, I move to hear Resolution 2023-11.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Carson.
And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Same property, different building. Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Any other questions about this from council? From the audience? Thank you, Mr. Carson. Madam Clerk, would you please conduct a roll call vote on 2023-11?
Snyder? Reynolds?
Aye.
Weiss?
Aye.
Brown?
Aye.
Williamson?
Aye.
Downing?
Aye.
Resolution passes 6-0.
Thank you. Last resolution for this evening is 2023-12.
A resolution of the Common Council approving a grant of a gas line easement to CenterPoint Energy for the South Beck Lane project.
Thank you, Mrs. Hession-Weiss.
I move for passage of Resolution 2023-12 on first and final reading.
Mr. Brown?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Fisk.
Very good. CenterPoint Energy has approached the city of Lafayette. They need to acquire a 0.164 acre permanent easement upon the property that the Lafayette Renew plant is located on. So this resolution will authorize the city to grant them that easement. They did value that easement at $7,380. I reviewed the proposed location with Brad Talley, Renew superintendent, and he felt that it was compatible with their plant operations. And so I'm requesting your approval.
Thank you. Questions from council? Questions from the audience over Resolution 2023-12? Seeing none, would the clerk please conduct a roll call vote?
Snyder?
Aye.
Reynolds?
Aye.
Weiss?
Aye.
Brown?
Aye.
Williamson?
Aye.
Downing?
Aye.
Resolution passes 6-0.
Thank you. Reports of standing committees. Reports of special committees. Reports by the mayor.
No, ma'am.
Miscellaneous and new business. Reports of council people. All right, we've come to the end of our meeting this evening, which is the time reserved for public comment. You may make comment on any issue you concern, but please remember to keep your comments concise and limited to 3 minutes. The open comment section is not an opportunity for you to make inappropriate comments about or personally attack council members or city officials. All participants are required to maintain a high level of civility, respect, and courtesy for everyone present. Any participant who, after being advised, persists in discourteous or a hostile manner, which may disrupt the meeting, will be asked to leave. This is your opportunity to contribute to the community and assist the council in addressing issues that are important to the city of Lafayette. If you'd like to make a comment, please step forward and state your name and address.
I got a question. Who's in charge of this 26th?
Could you state your name and address, please?
Pearl Speakman, 923 South 22nd Street, Lafayette, Indiana.
Thank you.
5. Down on Till Road and 26, you got Arconic on one side and you got the Golo on the right side. Who decided to take the left-hand turn out of that? You can't, the left-hand turn signal don't work no more.
Is that where the construction is that you're
Yes.
currently speaking of? It's
Is
not
that the
completed
state?
yet.
Or you?
That's the state.
State project.
Okay.
So it might just be tore up. I mean, it might not have put the loop back in yet.
Might be
Yeah, I just
temporary.
wondered.
Possible that it's not permanently gone, it's just temporarily gone.
All right. Thank you much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Dan Sockel, 38 North 23rd Street. Thank you for allowing me a few moments to just ask some more questions about the needle exchange program that will be going on here in Lafayette. I'm standing here as an advocate for the community and the neighborhood around 2300 Ferry Street, where the needle exchange program will be taking place. It appears that the decision is final, that the syringe service program will be going in at that location. From the many meetings I've attended concerning this over the past couple of weeks, it's been overwhelmingly clear to me that this has been a decision, or this place has been decided upon before it was even announced 5 weeks ago. I understand that the county commissioners are the ones that fund this program. I understand it's the county health officer that runs this program. My concern is that from the very beginning, there's never been any dialogue here between the community here that's located at this place and the local officials. A couple weeks ago, the Journal and Courier had on its front page Dr. Loomis saying I was wrong in regards to the community's response in opposing this program at this location. He thought that it would go through with no problems. The reason I stand here now is where do we go from here and what safeguards can we put in place? I want to publicly state again that our Lafayette police force is fantastic. Over the past many weeks, I have many friends, I've asked many of our fine officers, what's your thoughts on placing it here at 2300 Ferry Street? And without exception, and I want to say that again, without exception, everyone said to me, not here, not in this neighborhood, and not by these 3 schools. It was that was their basic, they all were of one statement on that. So, here we are. In this very room last month, Mayor Wasworski even stated on WLFI that he thought that the health department would be a better place for the needle exchange program. That didn't happen, so Dr. Loomis stated it's going in at 2300 Ferry Street. So he said at the first incident, I will shut the program down. And so what exactly, I don't know exactly the authority that the council has here or the mayor in this decision, but what I would imagine that we do have some options in trying to protect our community. So I have 2 questions to ask the council here. What constitutes a problem or an occurrence that Dr. Loomis alluded to or he did not elaborate on? You know, is it 0 or a very low threat of finding a needle in the street? Or is it a high threat of a user overdosing in front of a child in front of a school? I mean, that's a reality. That's something we need to look at.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other public comment this evening? All right, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.